that's available to them, to constantly be moving around and changing as the moment arises.
Gameplay is all about, I have a limited set of tools, and how am I going to use those tools and those limitations to overcome this obstacle in front of me. And that obstacle might be infected, might be another class of humans that wants to kill me for a bottle of alcohol in my shoes.
It was important for us that we don't underplay the violence, because then the threat doesn't seem as real.
We see video games as this incredible medium to tell stories. We want to treat it as equals to books or comics or TV or movies. This is subject matter that would not be considered out of the ordinary to tell in one of those other forms of entertainment.
Fucking hunters. See, this could have been us.
We wanted you to buy just the desperation of these people and why they're behaving this way, because it's so brutal. And at the same time, we didn't want to make it so over the top, stylizing it, so then it doesn't become as real. It was important for us actually to hit that middle ground where it's kind of disturbing.
That glint that's happening on that curvature, it'd be good if there was a way that we can guarantee that from this angle, we're seeing it.
But
really
it's
flat.
overall too bright and opaque.
Yeah, looks like paint.
Yeah, see, the blood on the ground works really well. It's something about the other shader is messed up in this environment. We got to fix that to unify the look.
Shouldn't make you giggle or laugh or any of that. You should be kind of appalled by what you have to do, but you understand why you're doing it.
You want to feel each hit. You want to feel each concussive strike. Lives are at stake.
You want a death animation to have impactful performance, not just have a guy keel over in a ragdoll.
In real life, a guy hitting a guy takes a half a second, but in the game world, you want that to be as instantaneous as possible.
I lived my whole life in this very ugly test level. I basically just fight dudes in here all the time. Almost every move is divided between like an intro and a swing. One of the many things I have to end up doing is like counting frames and being like, okay, on frame 18, I want you to get out of here. I want you to be able to start moving. Every hit reaction that an NPC plays, they are not necessarily in the correct pose. When you strike them the next time, we just pop them with a 0-frame animation change, which is usually kind of a no-no, you know what I mean? Normally you want characters to blend smoothly and realistically into animations. But what we found is that you can cover that pop up with a heavy impact. They can go from almost any pose into the pose that the impact starts from, and your eye just covers up the transition for you. So if you throw a brick at a guy, it puts him in this like kind of staggering stun state. And that changes the moves that you do when you come up and punch him. So now I'm gonna come up and punch him, and now when you're punching him, because you've hit him down, you get this like auto aim moment where you get like a free headshot. I try to make it so that, you know, if you kind of know what you're doing, that you can set yourself up for 1 + 2 = 3.
Right here!
Memory on a console is a very precious resource. All of Joel's animations with every weapon, all the NPC animations, the stealth kills, you know, all of that stuff happening need to fit within a 4 meg to 5 meg memory footprint.
This is a list of everything that's loaded in game and how much memory it's taking, because memory is our most precious resource right now. So we have a level, we call it the bookstore, it's in Hunter City, and this is a zone, for example. So when I set an AI to this zone, he will never leave its boundaries. I want guys to guard this exit where you have to go through, so I'll zone a couple guys around there to make sure that they, you know, they can fight you and use all this cover, but they want to stay around this door. This is another key component of the AI, is what we call the nav mesh. This defines the overall play space of where an AI knows he can or cannot go. Hey look, that's where a cover used to be, and there's a hole cut out for it. I gotta fix that. Here's some other wonderful things. See these little red polygons? Yeah, that means they're not linking right for some reason. It's a bug, and I need to fix it. Welcome to my life.
Hey!
If you look at a lot of games, NPCs are usually only alive for a few seconds before the player ends up shooting them and then they're dead. We want our guys to be much more dangerous and much more threatening, which means they have to be alive for longer. They need to exist in the world for longer, which means you as the player can witness them acting out their behaviors for longer.
So we've been working really hard on our AI systems. Back of the box, biggest bullet is going to be like AI.
So we tried a number of different prototypes with the buddies, including having Ellie be super independent of you. She would try to flank the enemies, get behind them, or get between you and them.
And a lot of times those decisions should surprise you, just like a real person, a real character would surprise you.
And we discovered after many different prototypes, the best thing for her to do generally is to stay very near you.
You need the exploration, you need the scavenging, you need something to say like, okay, if we just crank it to 11 the whole time, then it's pinned up there and there's no time to breathe, no time to assess or analyze, and no time to really contrast. There's no way of shifting the pacing.
Puzzles are really weird, especially like Naughty Dog puzzles. I think they're very simple and satisfying. Most of this puzzle is strict exploration. You can see the ladder here, you can see the pallet there, you can see a clear route up to the ladder. So you're like, okay, maybe I have to get Ellie to the pallet, push the pallet over to this side, and like Ellie will climb up and lower the ladder. So that whole part is like, that's not a puzzle, that's not regarded as a puzzle, but when you feel like you've got to the solution and you're like, okay, I'm going to climb this ladder, and you climb it, and it breaks off, hopefully then the player will feel a little bit stumped and they'll be like, I'm not really sure what I am meant to do now. And so this is where the puzzle starts. Hopefully at this point, like all of the elements that the player needs to solve the puzzle are very familiar to them because they've been through the previous exploration beats. They're improvising with elements that are at their disposal. That's a really sort of like strong theme throughout like The Last of Us. So like you're a survivor, you'll take whatever tools you're given and you'll use them in like creative ways to survive.
We set out to create something kind of new to Naughty Dog, this crafting system. Our lead designer, Jacob Minkoff, he got this book of like the survivalist handbook and homemade munitions and all sorts of funny stuff. Just start reading about, okay, if I was just wandering around in a collapsed society, this world, what stuff that seems like I could find? Alcohol and sugar, if you want to make a smoke bomb.
It's difficult to balance the right amount of resources against what you think the player's going to need and making sure that the player feels like they're getting just enough to survive, but not too much that they feel like they're a powerhouse.
We wanted you to be forced to make some choices in the world that showed how depleted the resources were.
So if there's a particular point in the story where the characters are having a particularly difficult time surviving, then we want you as the player to be finding fewer items, farther apart, harder to survive. We will item starve you at the same time that those characters are feeling starved and worn out. Then you expose something to them. Oh, here's a cache, and if I can just get into that cache. Oh, look, there's a wealth of things in here. God, I was so worried. My health was low. If I had run into a combat, because it's always that thing in your head, it's that Hitchcockian thing about the danger that you see is less meaningful than the danger that's in your head.
When we're designing the levels, it's nice to have the stuff that we know people are going to encounter. We kind of call this some of the critical path stuff. These are the things that 9 out of 10 players are going to find. They're right in the way. It's where you have to go. And then whenever designing a level, you want to have that here. And then you also want to have that other second nook and cranny.
The player is supposed to go place a ladder here and climb up through the rest of the hotel. But what they can also do is shimmy across this area, and I place a really cool like upgrade kind of off the beaten path to reward players for exploring. So if they come all the way over here, they're going to get this really cool training manual.
It's a funny little bit of trivia. The HUD system, not the menus, not like when you hit start and stuff, but the actual HUD system where you see the reticles and stuff, was literally created for an E3 demo early in Uncharted 1, and that's been our HUD system, the foundation of our HUD system for the last 4 games. First time in Naughty Dog's history, we hired Alex. She's awesome, and she's got a really good understanding of UI and how it applies to games.
The thing that I hate about any game's UI is when it pulls you out of the game for too long. No one wants to spend time in menus. Nobody loves UI, if we're being honest. Weapon slotting has probably gone through more iterations than any other system. The stuff that we finally ended up implementing, you press select, you get into this menu, then you D-pad left and right through the slots, and then D-pad up and down will change the weapon, and then just, you don't have to press X or anything, you just select out of it. When you're still, like Joel is here, that's fine, but then as soon as you get into an actual situation, so I'm gonna go over here and cause some trouble. Okay, so here they come, oh god. All right, so now I'm out of ammo. Now I need to like get back in that menu. I have to like run away from them, get into the menu, get out of it. And it ends up feeling like super clunky. Like again, okay, I'm out of ammo again. Get out of here. I need to take out one of my other long guns. And now Bill's in trouble. Bill's in trouble over here. And I've got to like I'm in a menu now and it's like, oh shit, whoever designed this UI is so bad. Like, what were they thinking? Bill's gonna die. In theory, it worked, but then in practice, it felt a little clunky.
We wanted it to be the absolute minimum amount of button presses. You don't say to yourself, oh, I'm never gonna be able to do this in time, so I'm just going to give up. I'll die, I'll restart, let me try again. You want to always make the player feel that there is a way to survive. They can just do this fast enough.
And like what's gonna go in now, if you just left, right, D-pad through this stuff, you swap out your guns, like between long gun and short gun. If you're now on this gun and you were to hold X to pick your gun. So it all happens within the same system that you're using to slot the weapons. The first iteration that I did on that was awful. It just took way too long to get in. It was just a mess. QA was so upset at me like all the time. I'm sure they hate me now because of that system.
I think the way the industry is kind of maturing and changing in general, you're seeing a lot more focus and importance on refinement and polish. So having internal QA really helps. The industry is kind of changing from QA being this like tighten up the graphics on level 3 bro kind of vibe to like really being a more technical, mental, investigative job. On the publisher side, it's more reactive toward code being delivered in a stable, controlled environment, whereas